Honourable members, please be seated. Honourable members, we will continue with the debate on His Excellency's President's address, and I now call on the Honourable Simeone Rasopa. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honourable Prime Minister, the Cabinet Ministers and Assistant Ministers, the Leader of Opposition, and Honourable Members of the House and people at the gallery. Bulabinak. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to associate myself with all the Honourable Members of this House to thank His Excellency, the President of Fiji, for his speech from the throne marking the end of the first year and the beginning of the second year of this Parliament. Before I continue, Mr. Speaker, sir, I may as well wish and thank the people of Kandava, especially the village of Lomati, Tawawa, Nambukalevira, Ngalira, and the Tikino of Nambukalevu, who were badly traumatized and evacuated for weeks, and wish to recognize their bravery and survival against the earthquake which shook the whole island of Kandava on Sunday, 20th October. Disaster Management Department, please, your quickest response to guide and direct the traumatized victims. Kandava hates your better late than never attitude. Work on the climate change or climate chaos indicator. Kandava Church in Suva and its church choir for achieving its 48 years. It's a good celebration this Saturday. Everybody's welcome to the John Wesley Primary School this Saturday. Recognizing, Mr. Speaker, sir, and respecting the presidency as a symbol of national unity, which is immune and above from politics and even sanction in this House except by way of motion. Mr. Speaker, sir, we, the opposition, take an exception on some of the issues raised in His Excellency's address, given our past experience and feel of the present geopolitical and socio-economic pulse of the nation. On the outset of my response on His Excellency's address from the throne of His Excellency, if it was anything than a reassurance of this government wants to continue to move in the direction of dictatorship, as is the legislation agenda, policies, programs and intents of the government is spelled out in his speech. According to the Constitution, as the tradition, the President is perceived to be the head of state and is seen a symbol of national unity. It is not His Excellency's speech, but the government's agenda that is usually pronounced on the occasion of the opening of each session of Parliament. If that is so true about the matter, then I must add that the speech made today on the 12th of November, as was the one made last year, compromises the independence and significance of the presidency, symbolizing the unity of the nation. In a nutshell, before I dissect some important parts of the presidential address, which are very few anyway, it is reflective of the narcissistic attitude that this government has ashamedly adopted in recent times. Needless, it needs to be reminded that the narcissist's love affair with his own image, shadow and reflection was both a cause of celebration as well as termination of life when Narcissus' beauty faded away. That is what I see happening by each passing and more so confirmed by the results of the last general election. The area that almost everyone who has the interest of the nation at heart wanted to hear on was the compliance by Fiji on its international commitments, particularly with regard to the following matters. Miserably failing to adhere to early warning signs and signals issued on the Fiji economy by the International Monetary Fund. Making a joke by defending instead of admitting its vulnerability of the blacklisting by the European Union. Unashamedly seeking to defend and counter the observations made by UNERP report, and still wasting taxpayers' money by sending a large delegation to Geneva, Switzerland for that purpose. Not gathering the necessary courage, will to face up to the ultimatum issued by the International Labour Organization, which expires this month. Still no word to the pronouncement by His Excellency, the President, on the negotiations of PACER Plus, status on the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, or expression of any intent as how Fiji is going to comply, when it's going to rectify the remainder of the United Nations conventions and treaties pertaining to basic human rights. The lack of mention and again absence of the courage and the will of government of the day on the above international commitments shows that we are slowly but gradually becoming an isolated state whose international structure is questionable insofar as our commitment to global, regional and local peace and development is concerned. That reflects very poorly on the already dismal record of this government. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have a mouthful to say and I seek the forbearance of this House for that matter. I note with appreciation the remark made by His Excellency, the President, on the 2013 Constitution, more so the Bill of Rights contained therein. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, the spirit of those rights enshrined in the Constitution are brutally wounded by a string of draconian decrees cemented by the same Constitution. In this respect, I am alluding to the freedom of association and right of employment, eclipsed by a string of draconian legislation. This string of super decrees have crippled the voice of the workers, made the trade union movement powerless, and emboldened unscrupulous elites' interests of Fiji and overseas to exploit and enslave our workers as and when they wish. Mr. Speaker, sir, in Fiji's own context, what would those ILO standards mean? Let me summarize as follows. Decent and meaningful employment, respect and recognition of worker rights, the right to collective bargaining and respect for trade unions, the right to freedom of expression and workers' trade unions, autonomous power of trade unions to organize and conduct their own elections, immediately stop all surveillance, acts of intimidation, threatening and harassment of all trade union members, and collective union initiative, and activities either by security forces, intelligence bureau, personnel, or undercover agents. Right to strike, having exhausted all avenues of negotiations. A consultative review of the civil service reforms. Trade union executives shall enjoy the right to have a political affiliation. Take steps to ensure, maintain, and enhance the independence of the Employment Tribunal and empower the tribunal with adequate service and supplies to conduct its work. Amend and, when necessary, repeal the various draconian legislation that hinders or criminalizes trade unions' activities while allowing workers and trade unions with immediate effect to reassemble and march the streets. This sounds impressive as it is to those who respect the rule of law, human rights, good governance, and democracy, but to those who have developed a trade of governing by the use of excessive authority that appears to be a case for nightmare. It is a nightmare for them because they have not been able to transform themselves. They have failed to adapt themselves to a free, just, and democratic culture. That brings to me to conclude on labor relations, Mr. Speaker, sir, that these excesses by the Bainimarama leadership and the Fiji government, Fiji First government, now justifies and bring out in the open the reasons for over-regulating and overtaxing the lives of the Fijian people. They are not treating people like human beings, but machines. That this has worsened the situation further, forcing our people to live and work as slaves in their homeland. The intent is to keep enough people criminalized and living in Fiji to continue to fund for their self-enrichment and political extravaganza. On equal citizenry, Mr. Speaker, sir, this government has been blowing its trumpet on the notion of equal citizenry because, as they say, it was introduced to Fiji for the first time ever by the 2013 Constitution. Since then, the Fiji First government has continuously used this as its rally cry, exploiting the maxim that we are all Fijians, which, including to them, is something they introduced. Sir, 2 days ago in this Parliament during the Prime Minister's address, it was clear that they hang all the achievements on this. We are all Fijians with equal citizenry for the first time in our history. What does it mean? Once and for all, we should at least consider that equal citizenry means if we were to decipher why the government continues to shout this from the rooftops of every opportunity, to begin with equal citizenry. As they say, it is not a privilege but a right. Why? At the time of the French Revolution, equal citizenship was premised on the assumption that all human beings are inherently equal. It was prominent in the struggle against the feudal hierarchy and the push to overcome relegations as the king's subject. Accordingly, equal citizenship was designed and achieved and promote two kinds of equality. Equality on opposed to feudal status and equality in terms of citizens' rights to self-government as opposed to the subject's duty to submit to the will of the monarch. Thus, equality of status and equality in the right to self-government provide a baseline for and minimum concrete content to equal citizenship. The point to note is that it is safe to assume the original meaning of equal citizenship from the French Revolution is also applicable in Fiji. It is equal of status. We are equal under law, the right to self-governing through elected representatives. Clearly, this has always been the meaning given to citizenship in previous constitution. However, what is new that all citizens will now become known as Fijians. However, does that make any difference? Different ethnic groups in Fiji that we are all Fijians. Does that mean that there are no ethnic differences? We continue to discontinue talk about ethnicity, but it is rather amusing to find ethnicity being mentioned in the preamble of our Constitution. That skins the cat to the bone. On the fisheries sector, Mr. Speaker, I have a couple of points to make as Shadow Minister for Fisheries. Allow me to begin on a positive note and commending and thanking all those that participated and ensured the successful year of the FJ movement. Fishing ban, which is in line with Sustainable Development Goal 1, no poverty, and Sustainable Development Goal 7, partnership to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, sir, fish as a staple diet in Fiji and the Pacific is now endangered by the number of factors which I sum up as follows. Overharvesting of marine resources, damages caused on the marine food chain by release of toxic waste and toxic materials, dumping of foreign articles and objects threatening marine life and local environment, seabed mining and damages and exploitation of fishing areas caused during exploration on the seabed and beneath seabed minerals. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to acknowledge that the survival and development of Fiji as a tropical and small island state is dependent heavily on the reef-to-reef agrobiodiversity bequeathed by our Creator and sustained by successful generations through the traditional knowledge and wisdom as much as their compassion for nature and for future generation. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, the opposition is further aggrieved at the grant of foreshore leases, or what is being referred to as wet leases. I think we should be kidding ourselves if we are not honest enough to look around as we tour the country on numerous examples of how the grant of these wet leases have damaged our environment and affecting the marine areas and threatening marine life. These are two fundamental points that I wish to raise in this regard are the respect, recognition, and enhancement of rights of the resources owners as was intent of the Golingoli Bill and now compromised by the removal of the entrenched legislation on the previous constitution. The tragic prospect of environmental exploitation and avenue for the loot of environmental resources, marine resources, which is and may be caused under the guise of research and explorations or economic development and investment. That makes sanitization by the relevant authorities and implementation of various laws and regulations important to enact and measure of enforcement rather than just lip service by way of rosy speeches in the House. Mr. Speaker, sir, with that short and sustained response, I hope the message from this side of the House is clear to the government side, which needs to do, which is not doing to protect our marine areas and marine life, compromising Sustainable Development Goal 1, no poverty. Mr. Speaker, sir, I intend to speak on the cover industry, given the importance of the industry to my province of Kandahar and several other provinces of Fiji. The first issue that I wish to rise in this debate is that the proposed cover council in the cover industry bill, which I see as a duplication of the role as well as the powers and the functions of the Cover Dealers Association. The question is, in that regard, are whether the proposed council will replace the association, whether it is designed to weaken the association to play a totally new role altogether than what the association is doing right now. My understanding, Mr. Speaker, sir, from that recent past experience of this government has been change of names of institutions and structures which does not make such a difference to what the status of the industry is. That is to say, the government is seeking to deploy the cover industry, that I must say without hesitation that it is ridiculous and deplored by all the stakeholders in the cover industry. Secondly, sir, let me question the rationale and wisdom behind the move to regulate the cover industry. Is this move to empower the cover growers and dealers, or is it another trap to extract the much-needed funds by way of taxes and levy to continue the fundraising for this cash-strapped dictatorship? Thirdly, listen, as the indicators show that the GDP component of the cover industry is on the rise, which is a positive sign for the future of this agro-based industry. That being so, the opposition wishes to question the government what kind of assistance has been rendered to the cover growers and dealers to express the scope of activities, or what are the plans in place to do so in the near future. I am more than excited and pleased to note that the announcement of His Excellency the President about the planning and build-up towards the Fiji Golden Jubilee celebrations next year, expressing the hope that the government will be inclusive in its approach and planning for the events to enable every Fijian to have the ownership of the celebration. Whilst on public holidays, I'm extremely grateful to the past and present governments for having retained Diwali and Prophet Muhammad birthday as public holidays in Fiji. It is time that government, Ministry of Tokay and the Assistant Minister of Tokay reinstate Ratskuna Day instead of the Constitution Day. Also consider national scale of celebrations on the occasion of annual Indigenous Day for the natives of Fiji and Rotuma, which is in line with the spirit of the deed of cession of both Fiji in 1874 and 1879. In inclusion, Mr. Speaker, the short address from the throne depicts few things. Firstly, playing double role, excelling in politics of diversion, using taxpayers' funds to extremely run propaganda to hoodwink the same taxpayers and continue to systematic implementation of cultural autonomy. Secondly, the promises made to the voters of this country to obtain and not to handsome mandate last year by this government, and it was in 2014, remains unfulfilled and not reflected on the agenda spelled out in the speech by His Excellency the President. That is not only masquerading with the mandate of the people, but a sheer act of betrayal of the faith and trust of all those who voted this government into office. And thirdly, the government who lost the plot and is looking for answers for its exit strategy. It is caught up in the web of its contradictions. That sums up the cause of widespread disenchantment and growing opposition to this government by each passing day. As the loyal opposition of the people of Fiji, we have sacred duty to our country and its people. We will not shy away from being voices and true representatives here in this House. Therefore, with these few words, Mr. Speaker, sir, a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year's to all the honourable members and their families. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have reservations. Until then, I cannot support the motion. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Simeone Rossouwa for his contribution to the debate on the President's address. I now give the floor to the Minister for Defence, National Security and Foreign Affairs, the Honourable Inia Sirui Ratu. You have the floor, sir.
The Honourable Speaker, Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Cabinet Ministers and Assistant Ministers, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to join my government colleagues in expressing my support for His Excellency the President's clarity of vision as articulated in his speech that opened Parliament last week. I believe His Excellency's speech captures the compelling national vision that Parliament needs to have. It is certainly the pillar of the Honourable Prime Minister's work and outlook and the bedrock of our foreign and domestic policies. His Excellency very rightly mentioned the importance of our Constitution. We are all in this August House because of it, and our services is defined by its parameters. His Excellency was most gracious and patriotic in his address at the opening session of Parliament. It reflects his love for our beloved nation and are the words of a true patriot. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Fiji First Government is duty-bound as true patriots to enhance the lives of all Fijians, which we have done over the recent years and will continue to do so. But the opposition is more interested in distorting facts and truths, instilling fear, stirring trouble, without recognizing that there is a reason why the people of Fiji put them on that side of the House and the Fiji First Government on this side of the House. His Excellency's speech should not be a political football for the opposition. It is very disrespectful by the opposition to use such negative tones and inappropriate language to respond to His Excellency. And for the leader of the opposition to say that it's the most ungracious that he has heard in the Parliament of Fiji, to me, is unbecoming, arrogant, shameful, and disrespectful. Let me say this to the opposition now. The Honourable Prime Minister will not step down, nor this government. Not now, and not even in the next election, when we will prove ourselves again to the people of Fiji come 2022. But on the other hand, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll ask the Sumdelpa members of the opposition to do the honourable thing as well. Ask your leader to step down. It will be good for your party, and it will be good for the country. You are the Social Democratic Liberal Party, but you have a staunch nationalist as your leader. That is why you always have this strategic paralysis, the inconsistency that I've always talked about in this Parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, there's a lot of apprehension in the country leading up to the elections and even now after elections because of the leader of the opposition back in politics in Fiji. I say this because I love this country, Mr. Speaker, sir. There's a lot of discussions about the economy. I've been doing my analysis before elections and post-elections, Mr. Speaker, sir. There's a lot of apprehension, fear in our communities and in the business communities as well, Mr. Speaker, because of Mr. Rabuka's return to Parliament. And that is why I'm asking the Sumdelpa members of the opposition, do the honourable thing, ask your leader to step down. Mr. Speaker, sir, the opposition has run out of ideas. This is not the place to be calling for the government to stand out, which reflects their shallow thinking and lack of vision. I would have thought, Mr. Speaker, sir, that with some experience and wisdom on their side, they would have been a bit more thoughtful in their responses to His Excellency's speech. They can run government on their trump cards of ethnicity, race-based politics, and land rights alone. Mr. Speaker, sir, we do not hear any compelling national vision from the other side. They are only good at running down government. Mr. Speaker, sir, our Honorable Prime Minister is a man of integrity and vision. He wants to ensure that every child has access to free education, women and children to feel safe in their communities, and every Fijian to make a decent living and be treated with dignity and respect. In order to do this, the government is working tirelessly to build infrastructure, boost agricultural sector, attract foreign investors, increasing access to education, quality education, and making efforts to enhancing national security. These are the very things mandated for us by our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, His Excellency rightly pointed out the importance of our Constitution has in the setting the direction for a prosperous and peaceful Fiji. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is for Fijians like Shavin Kumar, Siterian Kelera Nokilebu, Joshua from Moala in Lau, Jocelyn Mani, Nix Tangilamba and his dive crew from Benga, and others that the Honorable Prime Minister has worked tirelessly to ensure that their fundamental rights are guaranteed under the Constitution. Today, Mr. Speaker, sir, we celebrate World Children's Day, and we also celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And it is great to see the honorable members of the House wearing blue to support this day. As we celebrate this day, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Prime Minister has just signed a pledge to reaffirm Fiji's commitment towards this very important convention. And I fully support your statement that our children are telling us loud and clear that it is time for every child to have a right. Our children's message to us is clear, and we have heard from His Excellency, and this is incumbent upon us, therefore, to do our part and help transform our children's lives and protect their rights. To disregard our children's voice, as suggested by the opposition, is not only against the Constitution, it is ridiculous to say the least. I applaud His Excellency for highlighting the names and contributions of our young Fijians, and in the same breath emphasizing the importance of leadership. The people of Fiji have entrusted this government with this mandate in recognition of these, and our peers on the global stage have also given us a platform like no government before. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are well on our way to implementing the Sustainable Development Goals that shape our 2030 and 2050 development priorities. The Honorable Attorney General presented Fiji's voluntary national review of progress on the SDGs last year to the UN. We showed to the world that we are making consistent, sustained progress. The United Nations has declared 2020 to 2030 as the decade of implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. At the moment, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are working with all ministries and stakeholders in the monitoring of all arrangements that government has signed with partners to ensure that we maximize and fully realize the potential these arrangements offer for the benefit of our people. In our missions abroad, our multilateral approach seeks strategic leadership on issues such as human rights, climate change, and oceans, while bilaterally we seek to enhance economic diplomacy and defense and security cooperation. Mr. Speaker, sir, through our effort to increase trade, tourism and investment into Fiji, we are working with the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Tourism in supporting their strategic direction, including the establishment of a new office in India. We continue to look to our diaspora communities in the provision of our consular services and encourage them to reinvest into Fiji and support our communities, as we have benefited greatly from these engagements. Our missions abroad are working tirelessly in reaching out to governments, non-state actors, and the public in their areas of responsibilities to promote Fiji. This is the blueprint that we work on. I thank His Excellency for highlighting the benefits attained by Fijians because of this steadfast approach. Part of achieving our national vision is also submitting to international benchmarks for human rights implementation. Mr. Speaker, sir, we take these international benchmarks very seriously. The Fijian government is also firmly committed to advancing and protecting the fundamental principles and values of universal human rights, enunciated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, while cultivating an ethos of a responsible human rights culture. I am proud to inform that the Fijian government, through the leadership of our Prime Minister, the Honorable José Voreqe Bainimarama, has implemented the majority of the recommendations from the second cycle of the Universal Periodic Review, the UPR. More importantly, Fiji has not just worked to implement the recommendations. Mr. Speaker, sir, there were a total of 242 recommendations, and we have accepted 187 of those recommendations. And therefore, we have embraced change and shown leadership on global human rights issues. The UN Secretary General, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, congratulated Fiji in this very August House early this year for its strong, persistent leadership on climate and oceans diplomacy. We will not rest on our laurels. These are crucial priorities that we will continue to emphasize in our foreign policy. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are building for the future. We are setting in place foundation stones that will enable our children to live in a better Fiji. To this effect, we have not just become members of the Human Rights Council, the first Pacific small island developing state to do so, but we are also a vice president of the Human Rights Council. We have not just ratified the UN Convention on Transnational Crime and its 3 protocols. We chair the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, Working Group on Trafficking in Persons. Aligning ourselves to these international frameworks ensures that we meet our challenges head-on. Mr. Speaker, His Excellency noted that there was no more work to be done, that we needed to turn our attention to the mountain of progress left to ascend. At the regional level, Mr. Speaker, sir, work continues as the Honorable Prime Minister attended the PIF leaders meeting in Tuvalu in August, where he reaffirmed Fiji's commitment to safeguarding and protecting the interests of Pacific Island countries. In 2021, Fiji will host a forum leaders meeting to mark the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the organization in July this year. Fiji chaired the Pacific Islands Development Forum and have agreed for a number of reforms and review to ensure that the organization remains relevant and is able to meet the needs and priorities of Pacific small island developing states. I am pleased to also say before this August House that the leaders have also appointed a Fijian in the like of Ambassador Solomara to be at the helm of the organization. Managing the geopolitical tensions of the various state and institutional actors in our region is ongoing. We are well aware of what is at stake and continue to steer our ship in the right direction. Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji is keen to provide leadership for small island states. As such, Fiji is currently the chair of the Pacific Small Island Developing States and is providing leadership in the UN to advance the interests of the Pacific Island countries globally. Likewise, we are the chair of the Forum of Small States of the World Bank. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we celebrate our country's 50th anniversary of Fiji's independence from Great Britain in 2020, we want to be proud of our collective global achievements as Fijians. I hope the opposition will attend this celebration because none of them attended the last Independence Day celebration except the Honorable Rasob. Mr. Speaker, sir, as part of our continuous contribution to global peace, our force continues to receive high accolades for their outstanding service in war-torn regions such as Yemen, Sinai, Iraq, Egypt, Syria, South Sudan, Israel, to name a few. We as a nation can be proud of our long contribution in bringing peace to these regions. Fiji continues to serve the international community with great pride through its peacekeeping operations. We are stably deployed in Andov and in Iraq and on levels that we can support well and maintain. We have worked very closely with Australia and New Zealand in preparing our troops to the high standards required by the United Nations in its Action for Peace agenda. As the Minister responsible for both Defence and Foreign Affairs, I cannot stress how important UN peacekeeping is for our foreign policy priorities. Mr. Speaker, sir, in addition to peacekeeping is the continued efforts to integrate more women into our forces. I am proud to report that our contribution of servicewomen is the highest ever employed, and this is directly in line with the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, and of course the UN Sustainable Development Goal 5. Our effort will not stop there, Mr. Speaker, sir. Our endeavor now is to enhance our recruitment of servicewomen for both local and overseas deployment, hence surpassing the required threshold of women in our forces. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Fiji Police Force is well on par with the advancement of women within its ranks. A testament of this is the current appointment of Fiji's first ever female police commissioner on a UN mission. Mr. Speaker, sir, my ministry has constitutional obligations to provide for a safe and secure environment for all Fijians. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, sir, that our strategic defense partnerships with Australia, New Zealand, China, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, and the USA, and others have enhanced our capabilities in peacekeeping, hydrography, disarmament, search and rescue operations, counterterrorism, force development in personnel, infrastructure, and legislation review, respectively. Mr. Speaker, sir, in line with sentiments expressed by His Excellency with regards to the review of Republic Fiji Military Forces Act 1949, I am pleased to inform this August House that this is currently being undertaken with the assistance of the New Zealand Defence Force legal team. In addition, Mr. Speaker, sir, my ministry is working in close collaboration with the Australian government on a proposal for the development of a Pacific Security College, which will be a milestone for Fiji and the region. Last week, Mr. Speaker, sir, the ministry, in collaboration with Leadership Fiji, conducted a national dialogue on substance abuse with the theme, "Let's talk about it, finding a Fijian solution." This event brought together experts, professionals, and survivors who gave the drug situation a human face as they talked about the work that they are doing in combating Fiji's drug problem. More importantly, it showcased government's inclusivity of CSOs, NGOs, and academics in policy formulation that is tailor-made for Fiji. Mr. Speaker, sir, to complement this, my ministry is working with the University of the South Pacific in the development of a narcotics mobile app that will enhance the cooperation and coordination of combating illicit drugs in the country. This app is in line with government's overall initiative of digital transformation. Mr. Speaker, sir, this initiative is also in line with our national strategy and our overall national security apparatus. Mr. Speaker, sir, another key aspect of this strategy is the adverse effects of climate change and our response efforts. I will work closely with the commander of the RFMF in developing strategies and actions on how we can best assist in responding to security threats brought about by climate change. And I would recommend to the Honorable Sokuru not to rely on Al Gore because he's not a scientist. But the best scientific report is the IPCC 1.5 report, which is available if you want to know more about what the science is saying. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a matter of fact, the RFMF will participate in a number of planned multinational exercises with our defense partners in the upcoming year. This includes exercises Southern Cross with New Caledonia, exercise Kakadu in Australia, to name a few. And this is mainly in HADR and of course the aim of enhancing the capability readiness of the RFMF to disasters within Fiji and the immediate region. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have already addressed this August House. The Fiji Police Force is in a transformation phase. This is aligned with advancing technologies to combat sophisticated crime. Syndicates and networks that have infiltrated all facets of society. This extends to the ever-increasing cybersecurity threats and cybercrime. One only has to log onto social media and witness witnessed a multitude of various fake and hate pages to warrant the need to strengthen our cyber crime laws to protect our society. Mr. Speaker, sir, as the Minister for Defence and National Security, I applaud this move particularly, and it will directly empower the Fiji Police Force. They will continue to pursue avenues to strengthen its cybercrime capabilities through the assistance of foreign law enforcement agencies. Considering the impact social media has on overall security and the increasing concerns of its abuse. With the backing of this legislation, we are optimistic of seeing a change in the way social media is being used by certain elements of society. Mr. Speaker, sir, the recent attacks on police is a great concern. Following the death of brave Constable Siutanio Matewan, this unfortunate incident displayed the great risks borne by police officers on a daily basis and further attests the need to better equip our law enforcement officers with protective equipment as used by police officers around the globe, and moreover, it reinforces our civic responsibility. Mr. Speaker, sir, I again need to highlight that government will have some special announcements to make as we celebrate our 50th anniversary, and I wish to conclude, Mr. Speaker, sir, in reiterating His Excellency's call to members of this House to take the interest and matters of and speak on matters of national interest. That path must begin here in Parliament, where we must show we are true models of the public that we serve in our quest to make our nation greater, and I fully support the motion before the House. Thank you.
Honourable members, I thank the Honourable Minister Enia Seruiroatu for his contribution to the debate, and I now give the floor to the Honourable Pedeli Wasanimbo. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Leader of Opposition, Cabinet Ministers, Assistant Ministers and Honourable Members of Parliament. Sir, I join all Honourable Members in this august House to have my say in this debate on the address by His Excellency the President on Tuesday, the 12th of November 2019. It was a great pleasure and privilege indeed sitting here in this chamber for the last 2 days, observing the honourable members from this side of this House laying their case before the highest court of this land, and via the media and social media platforms to the people of Fiji. I have exercised much restraint in the last 2 days to hold the fire in me, not disrupting anyone holding the floor. And it is my fervent hope that the same courtesy would show to me, though some of the honourable members from the other side of the House may beg to differ. Good. Mr. Speaker, sir, the address from the head of state should signify a few things which I want to share. One, it gives an account of what the government in office has achieved out of the mandate that was bequeathed to it by the people. Two, it gives an outline of what are the future policy and legislative agenda and direction of the government in office. Three, it evaluates the work of the government being accountable to Parliament, and at the same time, the tribute it has paid to His Excellency the President on the pronouncements being made from the high office of the land. Number four, it gives a respectful opportunity to the opposition to present an alternative set of ideas and probe the government on its conduct of public affairs and policy. Number five, it gives a sense of direction to the people where the government in office is leading the country to and how it intends to govern and manage the state. Mr. Speaker, it is rather sad and unfortunate that the address we are debating now lacks basically all these important attributes, which makes a mockery of the parliamentary process and renders this government ideologically bankrupt. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, sir, the address prepared to His Excellency this year is contrast to all the speeches delivered from the throne so far since the inception of this parliamentary practice in the history of Fiji, because it was full of praise, aimed at creating a feel of a good image against a backdrop widespread public anger, best at storytelling style, and devoid of any hope for a better future. Mr. Speaker, sir, a lot has been said on the response towards the motion before the House for the last 2 days. The responses from this side of the House reveal the reality and the truth in regard to the performances of the government through bad governance and poor leadership. As stated in the book of Proverbs, chapter 32, verse 11, and I quote, "The right word at the right time is like precious gold set in silver." Mr. Speaker, sir, it simply means that there is nothing more to conceal or hide in this august House or even on this land. And Mr. Speaker, sir, regrettably, our nation is like a lost soul, and a secular belief that God has no business to interfere with the affairs of the state. It promotes man as God, and may I remind the ruling government that there is a time for everything. And the biblical story in the book of Daniel, chapter 5, which unfolds the ruling of the Almighty God to King Belshazzar due to poor leadership, bad governance, and secularism, whereby during the height of festivities, mysterious words were written on the wall, which I quote, "Mene mene tekel ufasim." Daniel interprets the words to King Belshazzar that God has numbered the days of his kingdom and has brought it to an end. He has weighed him on his balance scales, and he falls short of what it takes to be king, unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of nation building and development is leadership and good governance. And allow me to deliberate some quotes on leadership, such as one, the true test of leadership is how well you function in a crisis. Number two, the most powerful leadership tool is your own personal example. Number three, a real leader faces the music even when he does not like the tune. And lastly, by Martin Luther King Jr., we need leaders not in love with money, but in love with justice, not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity. Mr. Speaker, sir, with those few quotes, the government and its leadership can be easily reflected upon, and no one is above the law. As fittingly written in the book of Proverbs, chapter 25, verses 2, I quote, "When justice rules a nation, everyone is glad. When injustice rules, everyone groans," unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, the mention of school children who were definitely taught by their teachers what to say of the Constitution rather than the words they use coming out of volition or from their own hearts and minds is a glaring example of melodrama in which this government has excelled at altering opinions in its favor. That trick worked well in the past, but the numbers of those being tricked by such tactics is depleting faster than the ozone layer. Mr. Speaker, sir, we cannot always build the future for our children, but we can build and nurture our children for the future through inclusive, equitable, and strong leadership that listens. It appears political change is taking the better of the language of climate change as passed by this government. Mr. Speaker, sir, on the Constitution, we on this side of the House wish to lay it on the record. One, this Constitution is crowned as the supreme law of this land, on the canals of democracy that unseated the democratically elected SDL Labour multi-party government in 2006. Number two, that this Constitution was made of a dead body of the 1997 Constitution pending the implementation of the ruling of the Fiji Court of Appeal in April 2009. Number three, that this Constitution was devised upon the pile of ashes of the burnt Guy Commission report, which reflected the wish of the people of Fiji on what type of Constitution we desired. Number four, that this Constitution was designed to grant immunity to the coup makers and save them from the long arm of the law. Five, that this Constitution belittles, dilutes, makes a joke, shows gross contempt, and has trampled upon the ideals and principle of deed of cession, group rights, rights of the indigenous people, universal declaration of human rights, and every fabric of justice and good governance. Lastly, that this Constitution encourages secularism, violation of human rights, inhumane and degrading treatment, as was proven recently when the Commissioner of Police was justified the arrest of a 16-year-old student by persons purporting to be military officers and beaten up. Mr. Speaker, sir, a few words on the national economy. In February this year, the International Monetary Authority issued a damning report on the Fijian economy and warned the government of the implication of its socialist slanted policies and programs. Then in June 2019, Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji was blacklisted by the European Union, followed the issuance of an ultimatum by the International Labour Organization to Fiji to review our labour laws or face the consequences for the same. Mr. Speaker, sir, now let us look at the remedial action taken by this government in respect of these important stately matters. One, they rejected the recommendation made by IMF and instead chose to play the ostrich game. Number two, they continue to fiddle the European blacklisting. Mr. Speaker, sir, the implications of these doldrums are already being felt by ordinary people. And let me cite some examples of the pain and sufferings in this House. Number one, lack of funds for capital development, compromising the delivery of better services. Two, stagnant performance of resource-based sectors and loss of jobs. Number three, weakening Fiji dollars and liquidity turning in gas and fading away like Zoom instead of boom. Number four, limited availability of credit facilities and discrimination against locals to enter business. Number five, the low rating for ease to do business in Fiji in comparison to the past. Number six, high inflation with a rocketing cost of living unprecedented in the history of Fiji. Number seven, lack of investor confidence and failure to create meaningful jobs. Number eight, breaking down in law and order situation, substance abuse, and increasing crimes against morality. Jeez. Number nine, poor network services, water cuts, and power blackouts, which are becoming a regular feature of life in Fiji now. Number 10, public infrastructure, despite millions of dollars of investment, adorned by jetties and roads decorated by the all-time world-famous potholes, even on the newly built roads. These issues of fact of the ordinary Fijian, Mr. Speaker, sir, draw home a few valid points, which are, number one, poor or ego-centric leadership and unsound policy making. Number two, wastage of public funds and no compliance to required standards. Number three, incompetence management of public utilities. Number four, lack of strategies to bail out the Fiji economy from its state of decline. Number five, government priorities and programs have gone wrong and proving counterproductive. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a loyal, caring, and responsible opposition of the people of Fiji, SODELPA's policy on the resource-based sectors, specifically forestry and fisheries, are guided by a twin-pronged approach. Number one is sustainable development of these natural resources, and number two, creating meaningful jobs and adding value to the national economy. On that note, Mr. Speaker, sir, as Shadow Minister of Forests, I wish to extend my sincere appreciation and gratitude to the Minister of Forests, staffs and relevant partners for achieving the target in the planting of the 1 million trees. That being so, allow me to address some of the pressing issues pertaining to the forestry sector, specifically which are as follows. Number one, to consider the repeal of mahogany industry restricted decree. Number two, return of pine and mahogany ownership to the resource owners. Number three, implementation of RED Plus project of 4 million trees in 4 years in partnership with landowners and with view of food security. Number four, resolve deadlock between the Ministry of Forestry and sawmillers with regard to size of logs to be harvested. Number five, review of terms and conditions of grant of licenses to log, which is discriminatory and reduces resource owners to mere spectators in the forestry sector. Number six, low investment in the forestry as a resource-based sector, thus compromising productivity, balance of trade, prospect for further earning of foreign exchange, and job losses or creation of no new jobs in this sector. Encourage the food basket concept to enable resource owners and those engaged and dependent on subsistence livelihood to grow and nurture more fruit or food-oriented trees, as well as those nurturing our bees for the purpose of pollination to ensure food security. Mr. Speaker, sir, thanking and endorsing the comments made by my colleague, Honorable Simon Rasoba, on fisheries sectors, I wish to add a few words on the same, beginning with a call for restoration and enhancement of the rights of the owners of the Ngoli as the inherent and right owners of the fishing rights, which has been grossly compromised by the successive legislation since 2006. Secondly, let me draw attention of this House and also to my Naita, the Honourable Minister of Fisheries, to the issue of port charges which embattles the fisheries sectors further. Let me cite some examples of what I'm talking about. At Levuka Wharf, the port charges have been increased by 130%, Levuka pilot charges by 335%, Suba Wharf by 9%, and Suba pilot charge by 302%. I'm quoting from page B8 of the Fiji Sun on Saturday, 2nd November 2019. Because if I quote the same thing from the Fiji Time, the other side of the House will not trust it. So it's coming from their own mouthpiece. No. Mr. Speaker, sir, on the next page of the same publication, there is a bold headline which I quote, Ministry of Fisheries to attract more vessels as numbers drop, unquote. That, Mr. Speaker, sir, is an evidence of how the increase in port charges have hit our ports and the fishing industry. The failure of the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Fisheries to tap on potential we have so far is developing a vibrant aquaculture industry that has left those farmers engaged in this activity of their own stranded without the resources they need for developing and expanding the scope of aquacultural activities. These are lucrative areas for resource owners which can allow them the opportunity to blend their traditional skills and modern knowledge to help in the growth of this industry. Mr. Speaker, sir, I must also point out the ongoing problems and the incomplete program for the people in the province of Lomaiviti, which have been highlighted in this House. There are ongoing issues at PAFCO which needs mitigation. Number two, workers at the PAFCO only granted 4 working days per week. Number three, the Pacific Fishing Factory closes on public holidays. Number four, we are aggrieved by the port charges which discourages vessels to board at Levuka. Number five, the heritage sites damaged by TC Winston, which are in fact all heritage sites, remain to be repaired and restored its glamour. Number six, the copra industry in the province needs revitalization given the damage caused by TC Winston. Number seven, the rehabilitation works in respect of several villages on Koro, Opalau and Batik Islands, devastated by TC Winston and the storms that follow in its aftermath remains incomplete. I hope the government takes note of these matters and takes the appropriate action to remedy the situation and ease the plight of the people of Lomaiviti. Mr. Speaker, sir, His Excellency the President made the mention about Fiji planning to commemorate its Golden Jubilee independence in 2020. Therefore, due to the leadership crisis, financial crisis, drug crisis, non-communicable disease crisis, pains, suffering in silence, and stress of the Fijian population, I recommend that let's celebrate our 50th year of independence with ethnic cleansing and healing, one national celebration of cleansing and healing. In the process, as stated in the second book of Chronicles, the Holy Bible, chapter 7, verse 14, and I quote, God Almighty appeared to King Solomon in a dream and said, Then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and heal their land. Unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, I hope the government sends its confrontational style of functioning and becomes inclusive so that not only some of those chosen few, but all the Fiji people have a sense of belonging and ownership of those events being planned for next year. That inclusivity, Mr. Speaker, sir, must begin with opposition members, community, religious leaders being invited to be part of the committee planning for the Golden Jubilee celebration next year. Mr. Speaker, sir, with the ruling Fiji First Party poor leadership and bad governance during the first year after 2018 election, I therefore join the Honourable Leader of Opposition, all my colleagues in the opposition to demand the resignation of this government and request His Excellency, the President, to call for fresh elections to pave the way to salvage and secure our nation. With these words, Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish each and everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Sir, I cannot support the motion as it is before the House.
I thank the Honourable Pedeli Bosnebola for his contribution to the debate on His Excellency the President's address. Honourable members, for the purposes of complying with the standing orders with respect to sitting times, I am allowing the Leader of Government and Parliament to move a procedural suspension. I now call upon Leader of Government in Parliament, the Honourable Inia Serui-Ratu, to move his motion.
Honourable Speaker, sir, I beg to move under Standing Order 6 that so much of Standing Order 23 be suspended so as to allow the House to sit beyond 4:30 p.m. to complete the remaining items on today's order paper.
Is there a seconder?
Honourable Speaker, sir, I beg to second the motion.
Honourable members, I now call upon the Leader of Government in Parliament to speak on his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Again, we still have a few speakers in today's betting order, and of course we also have two bills as already to be tabled, and thus the request for the extension of the sitting of Parliament beyond 4:30 p.m. today. Thank you, Honourable Speaker, sir.
I thank the Honourable Leader of Government. Honourable members, the floor is now open for debate on this motion. Honourable Politano, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, so we are in agreement with the motion. Just a concern from this side of the House, given that there is only about 4 more speakers to go, and also 2 bills will be tabled if we agree with the suspension. But just to continue and finish off the order of the day and not to have afternoon tea. Just that, Honourable Speaker, sir.
Honourable Member, I didn't hear the last part of that.
Like yesterday, sir, that you had agreed for us to, you allowed the motion, then we went for a afternoon tea because of some commitments on this side. If you can just finish off the betting order and also the bills, then we should not have any afternoon tea.
Honourable Leader of Government in Parliament, you have the floor and a right of reply.
No, I have nothing further to add, Honourable Speaker, sir.
Honourable members, Parliament will now vote on the motion. The question is, under Standing Order 6, that so much of Standing Order 23 be suspended so as to allow the House to sit beyond 4:30 p.m. to complete the remaining items on today's order paper. Does any member oppose the motion? As no member opposes the motion is agreed to. Honourable members, we still have 4 speakers and we have 2 bills. I have taken into account what the Honourable Mulitavu has said, but I'm at times suffer from TB, and therefore we need to take the refreshment break at this time, and we'll suspend proceedings for refreshment in the big committee room, and we'll resume in half an hour. We adjourn.